Welcome back to The Explainer. So glad you're joining us today. If you're someone who loves to figure out how to learn more efficiently, well, you've landed in the exact right spot. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating piece of source material that breaks down the top 10 study habits of successful American students. But hey, we're not just going to sit here and read off a list. Nope, we're actually going to decode the exact framework that these high achievers use to completely master complex subjects and basically crush their exams. We're turning these 10 distinct habits into a blueprint you can literally start using today. So what really separates a 4.0 student from the rest of the pack? It's kind of the ultimate question, isn't it? Honestly, it's so easy to just look at top performers and assume, they've got some natural gift like raw intelligence or maybe a photographic memory or just this inherent talent that makes learning a total breeze. But when you actually look at the data from our source material, a totally different reality pops up. It turns out academic success, it isn't usually about being the smartest person in the room. It is overwhelmingly about having better, more structured habits. Human memory, our focus, it just doesn't operate on random isolated tips. It runs on a system. It's really all about how you approach the work, not just the brain you brought to the table. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is how we've structured everything. 1. The anatomy of success. 2. Phase 1, preparation. 3. Phase 2, active learning. 4. Phase 3, retention. And finally, 5. The ultimate study strategy. Starting with number 1, the anatomy of success, beyond the top 10 list. Moving right along to number 2, Phase 1, preparation. All right, so this is where the very first cluster of our top 10 habits lives. This is all about setting the stage before you even crack open a single book. See, high-achieving students, they treat their study environment and their schedule as sacred, literally sacred. The first major habit here is optimizing the physical environment. We're talking zero visual distractions, making sure absolutely all your materials are right there within reach, and having a dedicated space that essentially tells your brain, hey, it is time to work. Then, the second habit is establishing a strict study schedule. And look, we're not talking about cramming whenever you just happen to feel like it. We're talking about planned, deliberate time blocks that you treat with the exact same respect as you would a doctor's appointment. So think about it for a second. How does your current routine stack up against these benchmarks? Are you, studying in bed with your phone buzzing every 2 seconds? Or do you actually have a dedicated, scheduled environment that is totally optimized for focus? Which brings us to number 3, Phase 2, active learning. Okay, once your environment was perfectly set up, it's time to shift gears from that passive setup phase right into the actual cognitive execution phase. This is where the heavy lifting happens, right? This is exactly where top students completely pulled away from average ones. They approach their study sessions with highly specific steps, tapping into the next block of our top 10 habits. Step 1 is engaging in actual cognitive work. Now, this means having a crystal clear objective for the session, instead of just aimlessly reading. You're not just letting your eyes glaze over a textbook page, you are actively interrogating the material. Then, step 2 is implementing active recall techniques. They pause, they physically look away from the material, and they force their brains to retrieve that information completely from scratch. It is challenging. Honestly, it can feel pretty frustrating at times, but it's precisely that mental friction that cements the knowledge in your brain. Actually, let's just pause for a second and really isolate that concept because it is absolutely the golden rule of the active learning phase. Active recall is defined as the process of actively stimulating memory during the learning process. So instead of trying to just push information into your brain by reading it over and over, you're practicing pulling that information out of your brain. Every single time you retrieve a piece of information, you're strengthening the neural pathway to that specific memory. It's basically the heavyweight champion of study habits. And this really highlights this stark difference in how students operate. On one side of the spectrum, we have passive rereading. And let's be real, this is a poor habit. Why? Because it feels easy. It creates this illusion of competence. You recognize the words on the page, so you trick yourself into thinking you actually know them. But on the exact opposite side, we have active recall and self-testing. This is the successful habit. Now, it feels hard. It absolutely exposes what you don't know. But that is exactly how it builds true mastery. If you literally just swap your highlighter for a practice test, you are immediately upgrading your study game to the top tier. Up next, number 4, Phase 3, retention. So, you've prepped, you've done the active learning, but the life cycle isn't quite over yet. I mean, think about it. What good is learning something perfectly on a Tuesday if you completely forget it by the time the exam rolls around on Friday? That's where the final grouping of our 10 habits comes into play. It's all about how these students maintain this knowledge over the long term. First up, prioritizing rest. This is huge. Sleep is literally the time when your brain consolidates all those short-term memories into long-term storage. Pulling an all-nighter? Yeah, that completely destroys this entire process. Second is spacing out review sessions. So rather than studying a topic for 5 grueling hours in one day, successful students study it for just 1 hour over 5 different days. This totally combats the brain's natural forgetting curve. And third, maintaining consistency. Just small, steady, everyday efforts that end up yielding massive compounding results over the course of a whole semester.
Finally, number 5, the ultimate study strategy.
When we step back and synthesize all 3 of these phases, the preparation, the active learning, and the retention, we don't just have a top 10 list anymore. We have one beautifully unified strategy. It's like a perfectly built engine. You prepare the environment and schedule to guarantee your focus. You use active recall to guarantee your comprehension. And you use spaced review and rest to guarantee long-term memory. They're all just vital gears in the exact same machine. We've unpacked the exact life cycle used by the most successful students out there, so the ball is entirely in your court now. I really want to leave you with this one question to think about. Which of these 10 habits are you going to start tonight? Look, don't try to change your entire life all at once. Just challenge yourself to ditch one single poor habit today. Maybe it's finally leaving your phone in another room while you work, or maybe it's just closing the book and testing yourself instead of rereading that same chapter for the 3rd time. Pick one thing, apply it tonight, and just watch how your academic performance transforms. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing.